It's brand new chapter day, and oh boy was this chapter juicy, because Horikoshi basically confirmed who the UA traitor really is. But before getting into everything chapter 335 has to offer, I will be quickly going over chapter 334. Also, if you find yourself enjoying today's video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button below, and if you are new to the channel, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so that way you never miss an upload. So in chapter 334, after we see Star and Stripe hit Shig for one with the meanest Uno reverse card by making it so that her quirk New Order would rebel against all other quirks before she had gotten her quirk stolen, Star's quirk slash vestige started destroying tons of quirks within Shig for one after being stolen. At the start of chapter 334, she was giving All for One major All Might PTSD, with her embodying everything that All Might stood for. Shig for one desperately searched for someone to give New Order to, so that way it could stop destroying all of his quirks, and when he did find someone to trade quirks with, New Order stopped ceasing to exist. This was due to New Order revolting against all of Shig for one's stored up quirks, which in turn killed New Order in the process. As New Order and Kathleen Bates, aka Star and Stripes, was fading away, she left All for One with a few encouraging words that ended up making it through to a young Tenko Shimura trapped within Shigaraki. After this, word got back to the heroes about Shigaraki escaping once again and Star's death by the pilots who were fighting alongside with her. That same day, the whole world had heard of Star's death, and the nations of the world decided to back down on dispatching their heroes to Japan and let Japan handle Shigaraki and All for One all by themselves. With the data from the pilot's X66, which was recording each biosignature and analyzing every quirk used in the fight, plus the insane damage Star put on Shig for one, the one-day deadline that our heroes had until Shigaraki would have perfected his body was extended by 1 week. Chapter 334 ends with All Might telling the class this very important information. Now, chapter 335 basically picks up where chapter 334 left off on, where All Might is filling in class 1A about Stars and Stripes' death and the extra time that she had bought for them by delaying Shig for one's completion by a week, and how she had destroyed a considerable amount of his quirks from within. We also get to see what the other pro heroes like Gang Orca, Rocklock Wash, Manual, Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, and Edshot are all up to, and they are all just making the safety of the general public their top priority by searching and rescuing any remaining people in Japan. Surprisingly enough, we don't get any insight as to what Mirko is doing. Granted, she is most likely up to the same task as every other hero, but I feel like her not making a small appearance in this panel kinda makes me wonder if she's going to be coming back in a very big way for when this all-out war begins. As we know, the last time we saw her, she looked like she was getting ready to head back out and kick some ass, so I'm super interested in seeing the return of Mirko just to see what she's capable of after sustaining all those crazy injuries back during the war arc. Moving on, All Might makes a very interesting statement where he says that it doesn't matter if we find All for One or not, an all-out war is inevitable, which is kinda giving me Avengers Endgame vibes, where I feel like All for One is just going to come to them and not have them come to him. And this all-out war and final battle will take place at UA, which, I mean, the heroes can't even find the villain's hideout for shit, so I wouldn't be surprised if All for One and Shigaraki just pulled up and said, "Hey yo, we outside, come run this fade." Overall, this chapter just feels like it's more build up to the big all-out war that's going to be going down, because All Might follows up by listing all of the biggest threats that they will need to worry about, with them being Shigaraki at the top, followed by All for One, then Dabi, Toga, the remaining 6 near high-end Nomu, and finally the remnants of the Paranormal Liberation Front. And knowing that these characters that All Might listed off are what they deem to be the biggest threats makes me wonder about about whether or not All Might or just the other heroes in general are just downplaying Spinner being a threat. As we all know, All For One has a special role for Spinner to play in the grand scheme of things due to him being a heteromorph, so it makes me think that All Might and the other heroes are downplaying my boy heavily. Spinner is an important character when it comes to the villains, so they could be making a huge mistake downplaying him like that. Cause damn, my boy didn't even make the cut alongside the remnants of the Paranormal Liberation Front, which is kinda sad. Also, the way that they have these threats set up makes me further believe that Bakugo will be the one to take down All For One, because it goes from Shigaraki being the greatest threat to All For One being the second, and the third being Dabi, which parallels our main trio at the end of chapter 344 in the way how Deku was in front, then Bakugo being the second closest to the front, and Todoroki being the farthest from the front of the page. Moving on, after discussing the threats, All Might tells the class that with Star giving them this chance that they need to make use of it by getting stronger, even if it's just by a little. Bakugo then claps All Might, basically saying, hey, we have already been doing that. The rest of the class chimes in with them saying that ever since the war arc, they have all continued their training as much as they could with the Wild Wild Pussycats in order to keep up and be able to fight alongside Deku until Shigaraki is defeated once and for all. And that with All Might always being out with Deku at the time, he didn't really notice this. For me, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because in all honesty, I would have really liked it if we had gotten to see the class training in order to keep up with Deku and just seeing their overall thought process through them training and knowing that Deku is out there and always in constant danger. I feel that's something we really could have used, and I hope we don't get something like that in a flashback, because I feel like it would be too late to have a flashback to them training while we are all in all-out war mode. It just wouldn't feel right. After this, Deku puts Bakugo on the spot, saying Bakugo wanted to practice with him and that Bakugo said, I'll make sure that you master one for all. And in classic Bakugo fashion, after getting his character development, he goes right ahead and yells at Deku, saying, I didn't say anything like that. Did your eardrums get shattered during your little escapade? Which I thought was hilarious. I know a lot of people don't really like it when Bakugo has a great character moment and then a few chapters later he goes back to yelling at people and stuff. I don't really see that as a bad thing, because to me that's just how Bakugo is, you know? He still has all of that character development still there. He is just being himself. But yeah, I really love this moment, and I also love how Sugar Man even acknowledges Bakugo's back and forth with his character development. It was definitely a nice touch. After him yelling at Deku, we find out that he wants to test out his new technique called Cluster on Deku to see if it's effective against someone who wields One For All. That way he knows for sure that it can be used against All For One and Shigaraki. We even get a hint that Todoroki might also have a new technique up his sleeve, with him looking at his arm on his fireside and saying, I see, after hearing about Bakugo's plan with his technique and training with Deku. I'm hoping this means Todoroki has either learned an entirely new technique that involves his fireside, or he has learned the ultimate move, Prominence Burn. Hey, Dabi knows it, Endeavor knows it. I think it's about time for Todoroki to use this awesome ultimate move. Kirishima even says to Bakugo that he should try his new move on him as well, which would help him get more harder. Pause. I know you shippers out there went crazy when he said that. All Might, seeing all of the students chatting it up about getting stronger, has a flashback to all the way back to the beginning of the series in chapter 8 during their battle training, where we see the students in their hero costume basically for the first time. I know it was chapter 7 when we see most of them, but in chapter 8 is where we see basically all of them for the first time in their hero costumes. All Might remembers this moment and how they were just starting out and how now they are ready to take on any challenge. He even says to himself that All For One is a fool to not think that Class 1A is strong. Switching over to the villain's hideout, where we see Shigaraki raging over his encounter with Star and Stripe and how she straight up embodies All Might in every way. He yells about hating All Might and wanting to kill All Might because, as he states, as long as even one person remembers All Might, his hatred will never cease to exist. This to me is pretty wild because this is sounding like a major red flag that All Might is for sure going to die at the hands of Shig for one. This definitely aligns with Sir Night-Eye's foresight of one day All Might will fight against a villain and die an unspeakable death. I'm not sure about the whole fighting part due to him not really doing any fighting after him losing One For All, which makes me think he might actually throw some hands and put up somewhat of a fight, but then again, we are just going to have to wait and see. After this, the real All For One calls Shigaraki Other Me and tells him to calm down and that their quirk factors are damaged, but as long as they take their time, they should be able to use their quirks properly again. All For One very much understands how Shigaraki feels due to their consciousnesses fusing and how he shares the same hatred. All For One then states that even though they didn't get to steal New Order by killing off Star and Stripe, they have removed their biggest obstacle. And with Shigaraki needing that extra time for completion, All For One, being the evil genius tactician that he is, wants to take things slow and not rush things. Dabi not being able to stand the fact that Endeavor was just flying around and still doing hero work, he is just tired of waiting around. Now here is where we find out some pretty crazy stuff. All For One compares Dabi to himself and how they are very much alike. Someone like All For One has only one goal but plans many different routes to get there. Essentially, you gotta have backups for your backups so that every single route all make it to its final destination, that being his goal. The huge difference between All For One and Dabi though is that All For One has a lot of friends, and the chapter ends with Shigaraki still being able to use what looks to be the quirk search, with him looking in the direction of UA, and as we zoom closer with each panel, closer and closer to UA, we see the gloves and silhouette of Toru Hagakure. This is honestly pretty insane. I mean, let's be honest, we all saw this coming, but it's still pretty exciting nonetheless, right? Because we basically got confirmation in this chapter that Toru is indeed the UA traitor. Honestly, I feel like this is going to have a massive impact in the story when the class, pro heroes, and the people end up finding out about this. Hero Society is already pretty messed up right now with heroes and the people losing faith in heroes. Now just imagine how people will feel finding out that a hero this whole time was working with the villains all along. It's going to be absolutely nuts and I'm all here for it. As for my final thoughts on the chapter, I thought the chapter was pretty solid. Again, this chapter is just setting up things that's to come, so I fairly enjoyed it for what it was. I know there are a lot of people that really don't like this chapter for many different reasons, which is understandable, and I'd say my biggest gripe with this chapter is that they sort of brush over the whole training thing, because I feel like we really should have gotten just a whole chapter dedicated to Class 1A training and how they feel about the whole situation with Deku having One For All and the inevitable upcoming battle with Shigaraki and All For One. Still, I'm really liking the setups, big All Might death flags, teasing me with Bakugo versus All For One, the cliffhanger of Toru being the UA traitor, and the potential chaos that will come out of that has me super gassed up and excited for what's to come. So let me know in the comment section below your hype or disappointment from this chapter. Let me know everything in the comment section below. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button below, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you are new to the channel and you want to see more My Hero Academia content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on to join the Kitoroki Hero Academia to become my hero. Doing all of this really does help the channel out a lot, and it's always appreciated. Remember to stay plus ultra, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.